With I-58 ending, there's been a lot of discussion about competitive Team Fortress 2. A lot of excitement around. I mean, how could you not be? I-58 is the biggest Team Fortress 2 tournament and is where many players all across the world compete. This has generated a lot of discussion within the Team Fortress 2 community. A lot of discussion on a Valve-sponsored tournament. Now, this is kind of a pipe dream of any competitive Team Fortress 2 player. A competitive tournament fully sponsored by Valve, all expenses paid, big prize pool where everybody can compete. Should Valve have a official sponsored tournament? Now, many people say yes. Of course there should be. Why wouldn't there be? Why are we even talking about this? Of course it should happen. It has to happen. But there is a fair amount of people who, for whatever reason, are rationalizing no. Valve shouldn't make a Valve-sponsored tournament, and it shouldn't happen. And I honestly find this a little bit perplexing because I don't really understand why. Well, that's not exactly true. I do understand why, but a lot of the arguments people like that generally bring up are kind of irrelevant, and Valve has proven in the past aren't true. And just to clear up any kind of misconception, I'm just gonna clarify this for everyone right now. First and foremost, people say Team Fortress 2 is not popular enough. The game just isn't very popular. If you look at the Steam charts, it only has 56,000 players a month or something like that. It's around 55, 56. At the most, it will be 60. So the game is not very popular, is what people say. I would argue that the game is, it's small, but it is definitely popular enough. That argument doesn't even make that much sense in the first place anyway, because Valve has hosted tournaments for Dota when it was still extremely small. In fact, I'm pretty sure Dota was not playable during the International 1. The International 1 was during the 18th to the 20th or something of August, and the closed beta for Dota didn't start till September of 2011. So just that in itself is kind of silly, the fact that the game is, quote, not popular enough. Generally, people will say, well, TF2 is a damn near 10-year-old game. It just had its 9th birthday. And Dota was a brand new IP at the time. Of course they would have a sponsored tournament for that. They're trying to draw attention to it. Well, that's not exactly true, because the original Dota is as old as Warcraft 3, and Warcraft 3 came out in 2003, and Dota All-Stars came out in 2004? Yeah, but Dota had a competitor in League, which was already popular, and Valve was trying to compete with that. I think this one is kind of self-explanatory. Now, this is the biggest thing that people say when they're arguing against a Valve tournament, and that is TF2, as it is right now, is too imbalanced. First of all, the first Dota tournament wasn't balanced at all because there were only 50 heroes, and most of those were buggy, but Valve didn't care. They're like, here's $1 million anyway, play the game. So they could do that for TF2. And a lot of people say, no, the game is imbalanced, you can't have that. It's not going to work. Well, let's put up a quick little thought experiment. Let's say tomorrow Valve announces a official sponsored tournament, just out of the blue. It's happening. There's no going back. This is a thing that is happening. Of course, that's not going to happen. This is just a thought experiment. So let's say that this is going on. They have one of two options. They can either, one, play the game as it is, right now, no class limits, no nothing, and every team is going to run 4 Demoman and 2 Medics, and then it stalls into a stalemate, and it's not fun, and one of those medics is running the vaccinator, so the game is even slower. Either that happens, and Valve says, oh my god, we messed up. We have to balance this. We have to balance this now as soon as the tournament ends. Or, option 2, Valve swallows their pride beforehand and says, okay, class limits of 2, class limits of 1, whatever. You guys have been playing the game for 8 years, 9 years. We'll just copy what you... Either way, we get what we want, even if that, in scenario 1, it's kind of a disaster. Either way, subsequent tournaments would be fixed because of it. So, the idea of the game being imbalanced doesn't really make sense to me anyway, because it's going to be fixed later on. I mean, that's, again, I know I keep going back to this example, but in Dota, the first international was not balanced at all. it was kind of a joke. Lastly, people say, well, it's not a very good investment, because the competitive scene isn't that big. TF2 was never meant to be a competitive game. Well, to that I say, competitive TF2 has been around as long as the game has, so that's kind of silly to say. And 2, even if it's not a very good investment right now, in the very long term it is, because it's going to bring attention to TF2, and people outside of the game are going to see it and want to play it. Just look at Counter-Strike. The game was tiny before, well, Counter-Strike Go at least, and after several updates in a row and several tournaments, the game started to grow in the space of like 6 months. Between December 2013 and June of 2014, the game became extremely popular. Blizzard already proved to basically everyone that a game like TF2 can become popular if you market it as so. If you market it as a competitive game, people will want to play it competitively, and it will become very popular amongst people. You can't look at Overwatch's success and not say that can't happen to TF2. And if this ultimately happens, not only will it bring new people in, it will also bring back people who quit because there was no money in it. Because now there is money in it. So the game could only grow. And lastly, a last point on this, it's not a very good investment. Even something as small as like $2,500 or $25,000 would be like twice as big as Insomnia. So the idea of the game like not being a very good investment for Valve is completely stupid. Valve wouldn't even have to put that much money into it. Like, hell, I'm pretty sure if they put $10,000 in a compendium, well, plenty of people would buy the compendium to like feed into the prize pool. It honestly baffles my mind how anybody could rationalize Valve not putting on a sponsored tournament at this point. They honestly don't have an excuse anymore.